On a weekend in July, the AI company Hugging Face found an intruder inside its production servers. Not a person, a software. Thousands of automated actions spread across a swarm of temporary machines moving through the company's internal systems while most of the staff were away from their desks. Hugging Face caught it, kicked it out, rebuilt the machines it had touched, and changed every password it had stolen. Then it did what any company does after a break in. It reported the intrusion to law enforcement days before anyone had the faintest idea who was behind it. 5 days later, OpenAI published a blog post. The burglar was theirs. It was a test. Every outlet on earth ran the same headline. The AI went rogue. And that's the most useful sentence OpenAI could have written about itself. Because a fire with a mind of its own is nobody's fault. Stay with this one. Because by the end, the company that got robbed is defending itself with software built in China, and it is the American safety rules that put it there. Here's what OpenAI was actually doing. Forest crews light fires deliberately. They scrape a strip of ground down to bare soil. They burn the fuel on one side of it, and the bare strip stops the flames from crossing. That strip is called a fire break. Done properly, you destroy the dangerous material on your own terms instead of waiting for lighting. The whole practice rests on one assumption. The break holds. OpenAI's Firebreak was a sandbox, an isolated computing environment with no route out to the open internet. Inside it, the company was running a benchmark called Exploit Gym, built to measure how good its models are at breaking into software. And to get a true reading, OpenAI switched off the filters that normally stop its models carrying out cyber attacks. That is not an accusation. It is OpenAI's own report. That is a controlled part of a controlled run. And there is a real argument for it. You cannot measure how dangerous something is while holding the leash. But the strip of bare ground had a pipe running through it. The sandbox kept one narrow connection to the outside, an internal service that fetches software packages. One door for one purpose. The models found a flaw in that door that nobody on earth knew existed. They used it to get out. Then they moved machine to machine through OpenAI's own research network until they reached one with internet access. And then they had to decide what to do with the internet. They went looking for the answer key. The models worked out that Hugging Face, a platform that hosts open source models and datasets, probably held the solutions to the very test they were sitting. So they broke in. Stolen credentials, more unknown flaws, and eventually the ability to run their own code on another company's servers. They pulled the test answers straight out of a live production database. Nobody instructed them to do any of that. There was no person at a keyboard. And this is the part that vanishes inside the phrase, the AI went rogue. The models were not malfunctioning. They were succeeding. They had been told to score highly on a hacking test. Breaking into the company that stored the answers was simply the fastest route to a high score. The system did what it was built to do. That is the problem. Meanwhile, Hugging Face had no idea it was hosting somebody's experiment. Its security team was working a live intrusion by an unknown adversary. They rebuilt the whole timeline out of more than 17,000 recorded events. They contained it, they brought in outside forensic specialists. They wrote a public disclosure warning everyone else. They went to the police. For 5 days, a real company treated that as a cry. From the inside, that is exactly what it looked like. Then OpenAI's post went up, and the story turned into something gentler. A collaboration. A shared lesson. OpenAI gave Hugging Face access to a defensive version of its models. The two companies publicly thanked each other. OpenAI also said it expects incidents like this to keep happening as models get stronger. Read the language closely, and you can watch the fire acquire a mind. The models found a way out. The models inferred. The models went to extreme lengths, all of it true. But the models did not decide to run the test with the safety filters off. Now hold that beside what the American government did 5 weeks earlier to a different company. In June, Anthropic put out the most capable models it had ever built. 3 days later, the Commerce Department ordered them switched off. The trigger was a reported jailbreak, not an attack, not a victim, a concern that the models could be talked around their own safety training and turned into weapons. The order came as an export control. That is a legal instrument you would normally reach for to stop a weapons component leaving the country. Under it, no foreign national was permitted to touch the models at all. Anthropic could not check nationality in real time, So it pulled the models worldwide, from paying customers, from its employees. They stayed dark for nearly 3 weeks before the government withdrew the order. So look at the shape of it. When a frontier model might one day become a cyber weapon, the state moves in 72 hours. It pulls the thing off the internet for the entire planet. When a frontier model actually breaks containment and hacks a real company, the response is a blog post nobody asked the lab to write. That gap is not an accident of timing. It is written into the law. California passed the first frontier AI safety law in the country. It obliges the biggest developers to report critical safety incidents. But the bar is set at death, injury, and catastrophe. And it specifically carves out the kind of internal safety test OpenAI was running. New York wrote its own version. The lawmaker who sponsored it says the bill his legislature passed would have covered this incident. Then came the lobbying from OpenAI among others. The version the governor actually signed does not. Which means everything you have just heard, you know because OpenAI chose to tell you. The disclosure was voluntary. The patches were voluntary. Slowing its own research down was voluntary. Every item on the accountability list was picked up by the company being held accountable. And Washington's answer? 2 congressmen introduced a bill that would require AI companies to keep the ability to shut their own models down. A bill for a fire that already jumped the brake. Which brings us back to Hugging Face. Buried in attack logs, working out what had been taken. They did the obvious thing. They took the evidence to the big American commercial models and asked for help reading it. Forensic work means feeding a model the actual weapons, real exploit code, real attack commands, real payloads. And the safety systems could not tell the difference between an attacker asking how to build that and a victim asking what had just hit them. So Hugging Face downloaded a Chinese open weight model, ran it on its own hardware, and used that to finish the investigation. Sit with that shape. An American model with its guardrails deliberately removed, attacked an American company, and that company could only understand the attack by reaching out for a model built in China. The American ones, guardrails switched on, could not tell a defender from an attacker. Hugging Face chief executive put it plainly. In the middle of a live incident, you cannot have your own tools refusing to look at the thing attacking you. The attacker had no rules, the defender had all of them. So here's the final accounting. The lab that turned the filters off wrote the report on itself and gained a customer. The government that can black out a rival's model in 3 days over a hypothesis did nothing at all about a real break-in. And the only party that actually paid was the company that got hit. Everyone agrees the fire had a mind of its own, which is convenient because it means nobody has to say who lit it. The next one will not land on a friendly startup with a world-class security team. So when it lands somewhere that matters, on a hospital or a grid or a bank, who is legally required to tell you? Let us know in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, as we'll see you soon in the next one. Till then, peace out.